Hello, everybody. This is Sandra Pelli Sandini, Intuitive Inner Peace Mentor, the Dragon Ally, and the Galactic Shaman. I am thrilled to have you here today. If you're watching this on YouTube, I would love it if you subscribed because your subscription to my channel makes a big difference in my world. And this is brought to you today by my book, A Spiritual How To, and it is found on most Amazons. This channel, Step into the Light, Step into Your Life, is a magical experience that a lot of people have in their lives when they decide to show up for themselves. And this is what I'm doing. I'm interviewing people who decide to show up for themselves.
Hello, everybody. I am very excited to be here with this beautiful soul, Abby. However, I have had a day. So I would like to bring us into this space collectively together. And I know that Abby is a beautiful soul who has a lot going on in her life as well. And so I imagine that many listeners do as well. So let's just take a moment first to come into this space together. So I'd like to invite you to take a few breaths. And in those few breaths, I invite you to feel into the core, into the magic of who you are, like there's this beautiful seed within yourself, and that you're tending to this beautiful seed, taking care of it, loving it. And in that loving it, feel how that's radiating outwards to the rest of your body. Allow yourself to take a big breath into that. And know that with each breath that you're taking, that you are really anchoring that beautiful seed, that beautiful soul, that beautiful piece of who you are, that you're anchoring it in, and that to some degree or fully and anywhere in between, that you are ready to step into the light and step into your life. And so it is. Thank you, Abby. I actually have you muted because there's a little bit of feedback. That is the first time that that beautiful piece has come through like that. That was so magical. I didn't expect it to go in that direction and involve the title of this podcast. So that was very, very magical. And thank you for being the person that held space for that to come through. I am so appreciative of that. I'd like to take a moment to introduce you. This is the beautiful, beautiful Abby. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce your last name, so thank you for that. You are a second, Abby. Abby is a second generation Latina Canadian, a woman centered transformational life coach, and a mother of 4 children. Overcoming her own journey of trauma and addiction recovery, Abby is a fierce advocate for mental health and addiction awareness. She believes in breaking generational cycles of pain and is dedicated to helping families heal their lineages. With 17 years of nursing experience and training in women's centered coaching, she empowers women to embrace their inner strength and lead fulfilling lives. Abby's message of hope and healing resonates through her speaking engagements, writing, coaching, and facilitation, inspiring others to reclaim the light in their lives. And I think that is so magical because when I talk about the light and step into the light and step into your life, I've known Abigail now for, gosh, I'm guessing it's probably about 5 months, five or so months, almost a half year. And comically enough, she only lives about 3 hours away from me in Alberta as well. So I love that. And I've just really been witnessing this beautiful growth and transformation that's happening in you. And I know that transformation starts with self, and then we help others to transform themselves. So I'm opening the floor to you, Abby. I am so glad you're here. And thank you for holding space for me at the beginning. And I will unmute you as well. There you go.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Wow, that was such a powerful and potent, short, grounding meditation to begin our call. I think both of us needed it. And so it was just such an amazing way. So thank you for that. And thank you for having me on. You are such a beautiful soul as well. And it's interesting because before like I know you through James, like James, our mutual friend James, and I guess mentor. Um, and before I actually joined his program, about 6 months ago, actually, yeah, it's crazy. Like time just goes by so fast. He told me, he was like, "Oh, I have just the person I want to connect you with. She's actually local to you, and Sandra." And then like we kind of went back and forth a little bit before I got into the program, and then I got to know you a little bit better throughout those months. And yeah, and it's just amazing how the universe works in putting the right people at the right time on your
Mhm.
path. And it's interesting because I feel like I am where I am today because there have been a series of people that have seen have seen me, have believed that I have a gift, that I have many gifts, that I have something. They've seen something in me, and they've spoken belief into my life. And you're one of those people.
Mhm.
Every time I get in your presence, you're just very humble. You're very calming. You have such a great presence to you, and very wise. So you always have really good things to say. So very, very grateful to be here and to have a great conversation with you about whatever is going to come up.
Well, and you know what? I really, really love this. And I mean, you and I can sit here and wax poetic about each other all day, I think, because we see each other. I see you and you see me. And I think that's a really valuable place. And also, too, there's a reason why James asked us to kind of connect and meet each other. He knows I'm very much into the inner child work. And now I'm transforming the inner child to really connecting with the inner dragon. And you, too, have had this beautiful inner child journey. Could you tell us a little bit about that, especially as a mother of four? Like there's a lot of energy happening there.
Absolutely. I'm very passionate about inner child work as well. So I come from a background of growing up in a very chaotic, very abusive home with alcoholism and violence. And so, unfortunately, and fortunately, I will say, because everything that has happened up in my life has created who I am today. And, despite the darkness, I've been able to transform that darkness into a lot of light. I mean, the dark still is there, but for the most part, I've shone a lot of light into that darkness. And, so as a child, going through the experiences that I went through and not having any way of processing, not having any really role models in my life that could really help me to process in a healthy way the things that were happening. And as children, we're so curious. We want to understand the world around us. We want to, yeah, like it's just we look at the adults in our life as like a guiding post. And unfortunately, the adults in my life were just not healthy. They were going through their own, living through their own traumas. I come from a long lineage on both maternal and paternal of just violence, poverty, addiction, abuse, all of those kind of things. And so unfortunately, when I was going through those things and I didn't have any way of kind of processing all the things and no answers, I asked lots of questions, and all the answers that I would get was, just don't think about those things. They'll fade away eventually. Just kind of sweep it under the rug, and it just wasn't satisfying for me. I was like, no, that just doesn't make sense. Like, I can't stop thinking about these things. I don't understand why these things are happening. And so what happens as children is that we make it mean there's something wrong with us,
That's
right?
right.
We look at the world and we're like, okay, all these things are happening and I don't understand why. There must be something wrong with me. And so I really held on to that belief from a very young age, where there was just something inherently wrong with me. There was no one else could relate. No one else understood what I was going through. Not even my own parents could understand why I was going through the things I was going through and witnessing all the things I had witnessed. And so that followed me into my teen years, where I eventually, after many trials of coping mechanisms that I picked up along the way to just cope with the stuff that was happening, eating disorders, kind of misbehaving in school, all of those kind of things. Eventually, in my teen years, I found alcohol, and really that turned into a medication for me, where for the first time, everything that I had tried up until that point did not give me the numbing effect that alcohol did, where it
Mm.
just completely numbed numbed me from thinking and feeling anything, and so with that, unfortunately, is that when you numb the bad, you also numb the good. So
Yeah.
even though good things were happening in my life, I just was so oblivious to it. I became like such a shell of a person and really got involved into a really heavy partying lifestyle. And, that led to lots of problems, lots of trouble, getting involved with the wrong people, lots of heartache, just lots and lots of just layers added to the trauma that I had already experienced, kind of followed me into my teenage years and my adult years. Until eventually, in my early 20s, I went to university. I got my nursing degree through it all, and became a nurse because in my heart, I always wanted to help people. And I had an aunt that was also a nurse, and I got to shadow her in high school, and I got to go into her clinic and see how she like dealt with patients and things like that. And I was like, this is so cool. And I saw the gratitude that the patients had for her, for caring for them and all of that kind of stuff. So it really instilled a seed in me that I wanted to do this as well. So I went into nursing, and ended up working in geriatrics for 17 years, which I never would have imagined. I wanted to be like an operating room nurse or day surgery. And I did try those things, but ended up working with the elderly, which was completely out of my comfort zone, but ended up being something that actually really transformed my life. Kind of getting in the industry and being around the elderly and seeing the life cycles and all of that kind of stuff. But in that profession, that there wasn't that satisfaction that I thought I would have, because at the end of the day, I realized really quickly that even though my heart was in the right place and I wanted to connect with my patients and all of that kind of stuff, you actually are very much discouraged from doing that. You're at the end of the day, you're an employee. You're there to do your job, and there's tasks that you're there to do. And so when I started to form connections with some of my patients and like they would pass away, I would be so devastated. Like I just was devastated. And, the older nurses, the senior nurses had no sympathy for me. They were just like, you need to suck it up. This is this is part of the job. If you're going to react like this every time you lose a patient, you're going to have a really hard career. And I just remember like hearing those harsh words, and I was in my early 20s here, and I just sucked it up. And so then I just ended up developing more of like a hard, like almost desensitized. I became desensitized to like, my environment and all that kind of stuff. But, behind the scenes, I was working, and then little by little, I was kind of climbing the corporate ladder. I ended up becoming a charge nurse, and did that for about 10 years. But behind the scenes, I was struggling heavily, heavily at this point in my life with alcohol, and just really doing two things: working full time as a nurse, and then coming home and pretty much drinking the rest of the evening until I blacked out and fell asleep and woke up, and the cycle continued, right? And so and then through that, I met my partner, who's my current husband. We've been together for 15 years. He was completely a different person than I ever had attracted in my life. I was very much attracted, very toxic relationships, because that's all I saw growing up. And then so we met, and we got married. We had a beautiful wedding. We started traveling the world. We bought a home. We bought cars. All of the things externally looked amazing, but internally, I was very much suffering. I was suffering in silence, and still not having had any opportunity to make sense of my world as a child. And
Can I stop you there?
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. I just want everybody to kind of just take this in. You have you've been speaking for quite a time now, and I just want everybody to kind of just embrace where they may be at in your life, meaning where they saw themselves. At whatever point it is, there was something already that Abby has said that maybe you really, really resonated with. And then through it all, still capable at some level to attain something materialistic, if you will. I guess that pretty well sums it up, though, really, isn't it? It's this materialistic world that looked like she was surviving, like she, not surviving, it looked like you were thriving. You weren't, you were surviving. You were surviving. You don't look old enough to have a 17-year career in nursing to start with. And I'm so glad those nurses on one hand were very, very upfront with you about you won't be able to handle this if you don't make some changes. sadly you changed in one direction when there might have been opportunities for other ways to change, meaning that you shut down and became a hard case versus shifting into something a little bit different. And so I just wanted to kind of point these little bits out for those who are following, because you have been eloquently telling us your background. And so now you're at that pivotal point where you've got the husband, you've got the outward look of thriving, but you know inside you're not, you're only surviving. So what's going on now?
Yeah, so on the cusp of my 30th birthday, so I actually yeah, I have really like good skin, so I don't look my age. um, but 10 years ago, actually, almost to the day, 10 years ago, I hit my final rock bottom. And so I always talk about how for many of us, there isn't just a rock bottom, there could be multiple rock bottoms. It's just when you
Mm,
make the decision that this is
yep.
your last rock bottom. And so I got to that place at the cusp of my 30th birthday, still very much living that double life, of, yeah, looking great and smelling great and all that kind of stuff, but yet behind closed doors, very, very much struggling with severe anxiety and depression, and even suicide ideations. Like I talk about this quite a bit because it's still very highly stigmatized.
Yeah.
And I attempted to take my life 3 different times from the age of 9, in my teen years at like 15, 16, and then in my adult years at like in my early 20s, I think 23, 24. Like that's how much pain I was struggling with. And interestingly enough, during those attempts, they were all very much cries for help for me, and they were very much ignored, right? Like they were
Mm,
just like kind of passed along as like, oh, she's just a troubled teenager. Oh, like this and that. Like, no one ever really came to me and looked me in the eyes and said, hey, like, are you okay? Like what's going on? Had somebody had like, shown that kind of interest or that concern, I would have told them like I'm not okay and I don't know what's wrong with me and all those things. But everyone just kind of brushed it aside, and so I just continued that life. And so, cusp of 30th birthday, I ended up in jail for the second time in my life, and that was really the bottom for me. I woke up the next day, and I had this whole paperwork of stuff, and it was like a nightmare, and I was like, oh my gosh, like what is happening here? Like this is crazy. And I thought to myself, the first thought that I thought was, um I'm really playing with fire here, and maybe next
mm,
time I'm not going to be lucky enough that I'm going to be okay. I'm either going to hurt somebody and not be able to come back from that, or like all these kind of things, right?
yeah.
I knew in the pit of my stomach that I was very much playing with fire, and that there's some serious consequences were going to happen. And I hear a saying about addiction takes you ends up in one of three places, which is either hospital, institution, or death, right? And I had pretty much been, or jail, institution, or death. And I had pretty much like, kind of tasted all of those, right? And I just knew that at this point in my life, it was just um yeah, it was enough, right? And so I made that decision that morning, that I needed help, and I had no idea what that was going to look like. I had no idea where to start. I just knew that I just didn't want to continue living like this anymore. It was just too much. It was too much for me. And so
Yeah.
I the first person I told was my husband. I said, I'm like, I need help. And he's like, what can I do? Like, what can I do to help you? And and he had his concerns, like, and he would
Of
approach me
course.
about his concerns about my drinking and things like that, and I would brush it off, and I'd get mad and defensive and all those kind of things, right? But this time I was very much like open and humbled, and I was like, I need help. And so that began my journey of healing and recovery, and then really coming home to myself and reconnecting with myself. Because interesting that you pointed out about my nursing and how I shut down. That was a very learned pattern for me, because as a child, I kind of, as you know, children are very intuitive. We are very, very, very intuitive. We're very aware of our surroundings, both spiritually and physically. And when your intuition as a child is telling you that something is not okay, that what's happening is not okay, but yet the adults around you are telling you that it is okay and just brush it off and just, like forget about it, all those kind of things. Um, like I had to, I can no longer trust that intuition. So as a safety and a survival mechanism, I had to learn to disconnect myself, from my intuition, from that inner voice that is telling me and signaling that, these things are not okay, all that kind of stuff, right? And that followed me well into my adult life, where I was very much disconnected from my inner knowing, from my intuition, from my inner child. I completely locked her away in, some abyss and threw away the key. Like I was like, I do not want to hear from you, like nothing, right? And so,
I just want to stop you
yes,
again because um,
yes,
what I'm hearing some lifelines coming in here right now. Like I'm hearing how other people, if they're hearing this and hearing you, that they're seeing, again, I want to reiterate that they're seeing themselves in you. Because how many times I imagine both you and I have met people in our lives who have been in that, they're I don't want to use the word oblivious, because I think they get a sense that something isn't right. Like you got a sense that something wasn't right, and it became that when the big crashes happen, you recognize that the next crash you weren't going to be so lucky. I've had the physical crashes. You've had the mental and crashes in that other way, and not mental, but the emotional, whatever that is, kind of
yes.
crashes. When I say physical, I mean I've had physical injuries versus what you've gone through, and so I can hear how somebody who's listening is starting to go, okay, what, tell me what. So I just really appreciate that you're here speaking about this, for starters. I just want to let you know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, yeah, and so, that began my journey. And really, the first thing I really had to learn was to reconnect with myself again. And that was very scary, because I kind of knew deep inside that it was not going to be pretty, right? Because, like, if you
Mm,
unleash, all this suffering little girl that was inside, that was literally like opening the gates, the floodgates to like everything, and then making sense of it, now
yeah.
learning how to process, the emotions and all of that kind of stuff that came up. And I truly felt, and this is what led me to drinking and all that kind of stuff, I truly felt that everything that I had experienced, if I had to go back there again and relive everything, I was going to die. Like I literally had that fear. Like
Mm.
I was like, I cannot even, like, when the memories would start to surface and the flashbacks and all of that kind of stuff, I just wanted to like silence it and numb
Okay.
it. And so, yeah.
Again, I just really want to drive home this point of what your emotions were, what your feelings were, because for myself, I'm the type of person that when it comes up, and I will tell you up front, I have not experienced a life like you, but this also provides me right now with the opportunity to tell everybody and anybody that it doesn't matter what your background is, you are experiencing life and you're meeting it where you're at. So listen to both myself and Abby are saying. From my experiences, I have the ability to go, oh, okay, well, I can look at that now, and I'll deal with it, and I can process my way through it. But I love hearing you be so frank and vulnerable and say that when I had these things pop up again in my memories and my dreams and whatever, that it was like, no, I will die if I look at this again. And I think it's really important for people to understand that they can have either like your experience, my experience, anywhere in between and on either side as well. So again, thank you for being so vulnerable.
Yeah, thank you. And so yeah, I basically, I'm such a huge advocate and proponent of community. And I think as trauma survivors, one of the deepest, most painful emotions or feelings that we really struggle with is isolation. Feeling that we're all alone in this world and that nobody understands us, all of that kind of stuff, right? And I very much isolated, and as a coping mechanism, growing up and in my early 20s and all of that kind of stuff. And so one of the first things I did, in my healing journey was join communities, support groups, 12 steps, all of that kind of stuff. I really, really sought community. And I didn't know at the time that that's what I was doing. but it was, kind of the only options that were really there for me. And I started, little by little, started to see myself in other people, and I started to have hope, because not only did I then understand that I wasn't the only person that had kind of had these struggles. There were other people, and actually, in fact, there were other people who had successfully overcome these kind of things and were now living happy, healthy lives, right? And I was like, what? Like, I was so blown away by this. And I'll never forget, one of the first support groups that I joined was for survivors of childhood trauma. And it was, I think, 12 of us in the beginning, and we came, and the facilitators were absolutely incredible, and that really actually kind of planted a seed in me later on, which will come full circle, about facilitation and what a gift it is to be a space holder, especially when you're holding space for such deep, dark, heavy kind of topics. And these facilitators did such a beautiful job of doing that. And it was very healing. It was so healing to just be around other men and women who had experienced, very similar, if not sometimes worse, things in their lives. And we all got to share, hold space for each other, cry, laugh, all of the things, and it was so incredible for me. And so, little by little, I was doing this journey and, really immersed in it. And it became like a full-time job instead of the drinking. Now that was this healing journey was my second full-time job. So I'd be still working as a nurse full-time. And then after work, I would be like in these groups. I would be, doing like therapy, all the stuff. I fully immersed myself in any sort of anything that could help. My attitude was of willingness. I was like, my mentality was, if this could help me, let me try it. If not, I'm going to learn from it. Right. So I very much from the early on just kind of developed that kind of mindset that I was willing not to reject anything, and at least try it. Right. And so that was a very overarching thing for me, was the willingness to just get out there and try things, and, seek as much support as possible. And all along the way, I started, kind of reconnecting with myself and learning how to process all these repressed
Mm.
and unprocessed emotions, and that was heavy duty work. It was very, very heavy duty work, but I wasn't alone in doing it now. Now I had mentors, I had
Yeah.
people that really I could lean to, and was like, this is, I'm going through this right now. Like, I just, this is coming up, all of that kind of stuff, right? So I was no longer using my own brain that got me into the problem in the first place.
Fair enough.
Now I was using other people, who were further down the path than me, and could really speak into me and say, like, okay, like, just, and really, really understand me and see me, and because ultimately, as human beings, we have, three major needs, which is really to be seen, heard, and understood.
Yeah.
Right. And when we have, when any one of those things are missing in our lives, that's when we have problems, right? When we don't feel seen, when we don't feel understood, when we don't feel heard, we feel invisible. We just get in our heads, and it's isolation, right? Like isolation, all that kind of stuff. And so, so that was my journey, just really like got into all of that stuff. And it's funny because now I'm a speaker now. I like a public speaker, and obviously I'm here on the podcast with you, and it's something that I'm very passionate about. But it wasn't always like that, because once you remove the alcohol from my life, like the liquid courage, I had extreme social anxiety, like extreme. Like I would get panic attacks when I was in big social settings, events, things like that. And I didn't like it. I hated feeling that way. I was like, why am I feeling like this? And my husband, who's very bubbly, he's like a networker and all that kind of stuff. He was like, you should come with me to networking events, and you should meet people and all that stuff. Because of course, once I started changing my lifestyle, a lot of my old friends also
Yeah.
started kind of leaving my space, right? Because no longer did we have those things in common of like going out and drinking and partying and all that kind of stuff. And so he saw that. He was like, you need
Yeah.
to meet new people, who
I
are kind of
want
in
to highlight that
your
point again.
zone. Yeah.
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 Highlight. Do you want to speak to this about how important it is to recognize that?
Yes.
And I thank you for letting me interrupt you, because these are just some really, really big points about stepping into the light and stepping into your life. Like, it's so powerful what you're saying here. That piece about how the people who were around you were no longer the people that actually would help. Like, I don't even know how to put that to words. People naturally fall away in your life when you evolve and change and you recognize yourself becoming a better person. Now, I'm not saying become a better person around like you're better than anybody else. What I'm saying, internally, you're recognizing that you're doing what's best for you. And in doing what's best for you, it's that you recognize that you have to let go of some of those old friends because they're no longer like, they may be friends that you can say hi to on the street, but they're no longer the person that you're going to hang out with because of. And it literally comes down to what you just said there, recognizing who is further down the path. Those people aren't on that path anymore. They're way behind you. They're still, and I dislike the word behind, but they're still caught in that rut of the drinking, the addiction, whatever else that is, versus stepping into that, recognizing. So again, I'm just so in awe of you here right now.
Yeah, and so and that was very painful, the shedding
Oh
of
yeah.
people, because like as I was shedding this old personality and this old who knows what I was at that time, because it wasn't even me really, like I was a shell of a person at that time. There was that natural shedding of certain people in my life because we just our values no longer aligned. We didn't really have things in common. They weren't really supportive of my new path. They were more so almost some of them were kind of triggered, to be honest, because here I was admitting that I had a problem, admitting that something needed to change. And a lot of these friends were pretty much drinking the same as I was, and so then by me saying, hey guys, like I'm no longer going to be drinking anymore, all of that kind of stuff, it kind of it's almost like a mirror for them where it's like, wait a minute, I drink just as much as you and you're saying you have a problem, and like people just don't like that, right? When you're not ready to kind of face your own stuff, and you see someone else facing it, that's why you get triggered, right? You get triggered and it's like, oh, like, so anyway, so yeah, that was a really big thing for me. And so naturally with those friends kind of falling away, I started to really crave new friends, right? Like new people who understood my path and all that kind of stuff. And so to get over my severe social anxiety, I started going to networking events with my husband, and little by little, after the panic attacks in the bathroom,
Yeah.
I, would come out, and then and it was just like, okay, like I started meeting people. And there was this one event where there was a person there, a woman there, and she held like events. She was a host of events and all that kind of stuff. And we got to talking, and for whatever reason, I shared with her just a snippet of my story. I was like, I'm in recovery, and whatever I said to her. And she just looked me in the eyes and she said, you have a powerful story and you need to tell it. And I was like, what? Me? And she's like, there are so many women that are out there struggling, and would be so powerful and important for you to share your story so that they can see what it can look like, right? And so she planted that little seed in my brain, and I was like, wow, like, and she actually then gave me an opportunity to speak at one of her summits. And so she had a summit that was coming up, and it was virtual. So I was like, okay, so and then for the first time I kind of shared a little bit of my story, and it was met with so much like it was very well received. It was very well received. And I was so surprised. I was like, what's going on here? Right. I was just like, I thought these were things to be like ashamed of, like no one needs to know these things. But it was actually something that a lot of people resonated with, especially about the suffering in silence, the depression, even the trauma, growing up in an alcoholic home. That you'd be surprised how many people relate to me with just that piece alone. They come to me and they're like, I also grew up in an alcoholic home. I know what that's like. Yeah. So, and it's things that people just, they just carry it with them, right? Because they don't see other people talking about these things. Right. And so, so that just like that, long story short, that led to like, me starting to speak, and more and more opportunities started coming up. And what kept me going was really having sharing those stories with other people, and
Yeah.
like them coming to me and sharing with me their Me Too stories, right?
Mm.
And I had an in-person speaking event, and I was like 8 months pregnant at the time with my second son, and so my second baby, who was my first boy, and I went up there shaking in my boots with my little piece of paper of my story, and there was like maybe like 100 people in the audience, and went up there and I shared my story just so vulnerably. It was 10 minutes. And then when I was done, when the event was done, I literally had a lineup of people that came to see
Mm.
me. And there were people that cried on my shoulder. There were people that looked me in the eyes and said, you know, I have a daughter who's struggling with addiction right now and I don't know how to help her. You know,
Yeah.
seeing you up there, like, is so, all these things, right? It was so beautiful. And that's what really became a big motivator for me, that now I
Yeah.
realized that this was actually bigger than me. You know, it was bigger than me. It was actually about other people now, and turning my journey and all the darkness into actually a gift, which is crazy to think. You know,
Yeah.
how could pain and trauma be a gift? But it actually can be, you know. And so yeah, so I started doing all of that stuff, and then I became a mom. And so when I became a mom, I was already about 4 or 5 years into my healing journey. And unfortunately, with my first baby, my daughter, I had birth trauma with her. She was born not breathing. She ended up in the NICU for 2 weeks. She was in a coma for 5 days. Like, it was very, very traumatic, very
Yeah.
traumatic. But I was no stranger to trauma, so you know, I did what I knew to do in those times, and really leaned on community and support.
Good.
And me and my husband really navigated through that really dark time. And you know, she came home. She was healthy. She was beautiful. She's 6 years old now, in grade one, thriving. You know, and so yeah, and then I had my son, and then so I've had 4 babies back to back. And so in the
Yeah,
last
you have. Your oldest is
yeah,
6? Wow.
yeah. And so then when they started their toddler years, it was a complete game changer for me, because here I was. I had a pretty solid foundation in my healing journey. I felt like, you know, when things would hit me in life, because just because I got sober and just because I started healing doesn't mean that life was suddenly like fairy
Yeah.
tales,
Yeah.
rainbows. You know, life will still life, right?
Yeah.
And there was lots of things that I was hit with, but the difference now was that I was now connected to myself. I was connected to source, to God, you know, the universe. I had community support. I had lots of resources and tools to be able to navigate whatever life like hit me with. You know, and so when my children started their toddler years, and as you know, with children, they are very emotional beings. They have big feelings, especially at age 2, 3, when they
Yep.
start discovering, you know, anger and frustration and all of those feelings. It was so triggering for me. I was so
Mm.
triggered. And I was like, what is going on here? I'm like, why am I experiencing these feelings with like watching my kids, you know, express themselves in this way, right? And what I actually discovered was that the reason why I was triggered was because the little girl inside of
Yep.
me didn't feel safe
Yeah.
when I was watching them express themselves in ways that I got in trouble for expressing myself as a child. I
Wow.
never was taught to navigate, you know, tantrums and meltdowns and all of that kind of stuff, to be honest. When I started behaving that way as a child, I got beat, you know,
Yeah.
and like that's not something that I wanted to do with my kids. You know, I was like, that is out of the question. But I had these like visceral responses of like, you know, I would just get really dysregulated. And so I was like, okay, like this is a new journey, a new layer for me. I need to like get curious about why this is happening. And so that's when I went into deeper inner child healing, and then understanding that now I had to enter a phase of reparenting. So
Yeah.
I was now going to reparent the little girl that was inside, and help her learn how to process these emotions and feelings, and then turn around immediately and do it with my kids. So it was like in real time, you know, reparenting little me, you know, talking her through things like, you're safe, it's okay, these are feeling like all the things, right? And then I would turn and teach my children how to, you know, co-regulate with me, right? And so it began this really beautiful journey of what that I'm currently still very much in, of really reparenting little me and then parenting my children at the same time and breaking the cycles, right? The things that I don't want to carry on that has been passed down for generations, it ends with me. I'm not going to, and I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud that my children have never seen me drink, that I can put them down to bed. Like simple things like this that people don't understand when they don't kind of come from this kind of background that you take for granted. The fact that when I tuck my children into bed at night and I kiss them, and I sometimes get emotional thinking about this because it's so powerful to me. Like I tuck them into bed at night, they're all sleeping in their beds, and they don't ever have to worry about waking up to breaking glasses, to a drunk dad, to like chaos. They've never had to experience that. They go to sleep in peace, they wake up peaceful, whereas like as a child, I never slept. I was always in fight or flight response, because I never knew what was happening outside. My dad was very volatile. Some nights he would wake up at or he would wake us up at 3 in the morning, and he'd be like sobbing and holding us, and other times he'd be violent. So it was just that kind of an
not knowing which shoe would drop, right? Not knowing what shoe would drop.
Exactly. So, that began, and it's still an ongoing journey. I'm very much in that journey right now of reparenting. I've had a situation even this past week where it was a very powerful example for me of reparenting, where I had a reaction to something that my kids were doing, that once again, I would have very much been in big trouble as a kid doing. And I had to really remove myself from the situation and talk myself through it. And it was like, okay, like, they're kids, they don't know that this is bad. To them, they're just exploring, they're just playing, all that kind of stuff, right? And the fact that, so basically, long story short, they were playing with mud in the backyard, and they ended up like when I told them not to, they heard play with mud instead of do not play with the mud. And so,
typical kids response.
Yes, exactly. And I went outside and they were just covered in mud, like face, hands, hair, clothes, everything. And not only that, but they had taken their shoes and they had wiped the mud from that they had created with the water and the dirt from under the deck, and they had smeared it all over our fence. So it was just a disaster, right? And like, again, this would have been something that I would have very much been in trouble for. And I was angry because I was already not in a good mood that day. I woke up, kind of in this like low mood. It's one of those days where you just wake up and you're just kind of in a low mood and stuff. We all have those days, right? No matter how healed we are. And I had to remove myself and calm myself down. And then, I gave them a bath and the powerful thing here, even though I was mad and they knew I was mad, when I was bathing them, they were laughing and playing, joking with each other and stuff like that, and when they came out and I dried them and I changed their clothes and all of that kind of stuff, like I had to talk with them and I was like, listen, like when dad gets off work, you're going to go outside and you're going to clean the fence with him, because now it's all dirty, and things like that. And they were like, okay, mama, okay, and it was just like one of those things where I stepped away from that situation and I thought to myself, that could have been, there's many different ways that this situation could have went. And this could have been a very traumatic experience for them, but I chose not to. I chose, because I have the tools and the resources and I'm doing this work, I'm doing this work myself and I teach other moms, which is, who I serve is other moms who are very much like me, who are, in the thick of motherhood and all that kind of stuff. And I had it was a big win for me on multiple levels, right?
I want to first of all, I want to celebrate you. I want to celebrate you because that is a really big milestone. And I know you're speaking about it here, and it's just, here's this thing that happened to me, and da 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 da. And again, I just really want to drive this point home to people that this is a big moment. This is a big moment. Like your state of awareness now of things is so important. And I want each listener to really pay attention to that, because we can just, and I don't know, fly through life by the seat of our pants, or we can, experience all the good things that we want to experience and slough off the others. There's just so many different ways that we choose to react. Right now, I've been doing a lot of acknowledge, accept, react, choices, and action, right? And you're acknowledging that, yes, you know what, this was not good when I was a kid, and you're accepting where you were at and how you reacted, and then you made some really beautiful choices from there, which is beautiful, and how you took all of that. So there's been a number of points here, and I actually posted it across the screen at one point. Pause and rewind. This is another pause and rewind moment for the people who are listening, because go back and listen to the small little tools that Abby took to change the outcome from what could have been so traumatic for those children. And not just a child, but every one of those children. And I can tell you with 100% certainty that if she had reacted in a different way than what she did, and even the way she did, that every one of those children is going to have some imprint of it that is different from what the other child experienced as well. So you're not just affecting in one kind of way, you're affecting in a number of different ways. So I love your awareness. I'm so proud of
Yeah, and
you.
like, I mean, oh, thank you, thank you, and that's been, a testament to the work that I've done in the last 10 years, right? Like, it has been very intentional, and once again, it has not been by myself. I give lots of credit to. I have a handful of incredible like mentors, even coaches that I've really leaned in on and that have really helped me to create these tools and these resources that I never had before. Never, and yeah, so.
So let's speak about this. You've got all these beautiful tools. You've now had a number of years where you are putting them into practice. And like everything, you are evolving. Life is evolving. You're becoming a parent in each of those stages. Like you said, when they were babies, they're babies. When they're toddlers, they're toddlers. When they're, pre-teens, when they're teens. Like, you have all these stages where you already know you're going to be living through whatever you experience and witnessing your own kids. And you have the tools and you have the community. So I want to hear a little bit more about who are you as that person who's helping other women. I want to know about this piece of it now. How are you helping other women? Who do you have a company? What are you doing? What do you offer? I want to know more.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of those, like I talked about when I first entered into my recovery and all that kind of stuff, how impacted I was by group work and facilitation. And so, as I started continuing on in my nursing career, it just was not aligned anymore. I got to the point where it was very revealing and very eye opening for me when I left for a year on maternity leave the first time I had my baby, and I disconnected myself from that environment that I had been very much in, like, for years up until that point, like I think 12 years at the time. And then suddenly I became a mom and all these things happened, and then emotions and hormones and all that kind of stuff, and then I returned back after maternity leave, and I was like so raw. Like, I was like, oh my
Oh,
gosh, like I was no longer desensitized like I had kind of like become, in that career. And I like that. I was like, oh, like, like the first day that I was back, one of my favorite residents passed away, and it was
oh
like
dear.
so devastating. And I let myself cry, and I cried, and like me and my manager, because like I said, we worked in a seniors lodge, and some of these seniors, like, this is their home, like they had their own little apartments and their belongings, and this particular person, he didn't have a family. And so me and my manager, after their funeral, we had to go in there and take all his belongings and all these pictures, and it was so sad because we had to throw it in the garbage. There was nowhere else to go, right? And I allowed myself to cry. I was like, whereas before I was like hard, and I was just like, oh, another person died, and it was just like, and so little by little, I just started to be just not aligned with that career anymore. And then I started thinking about other things. And I was very heavily along the line, something I forgot to mention in my healing journey. I also became a personal development junkie. So
Okay.
I loved personal development. I wanted to, because I overcame my social anxiety and all of that kind of stuff. I was like, I started to get introduced to human potential and how we all have the potential to, like, dramatically change our
Oh yeah.
lives, if we choose to, right? And with the right supports and all of that kind of stuff. And so very much dove deep into personal development, lots of like classes and trainings and seminars and all of that kind of stuff. And I started to get like, so at this point I was already speaking, so I was already speaking pretty regularly. I started writing, and then I got published and writing about like my advocacy with like being a complex trauma survivor, and then my recovery journey. I started very much opening that up and in my life, and very public about it. I started really sharing, in my eyes, for the greater good. It was no longer about me. It was now so that other people could see themselves in me and could have an example, that role model that I so badly wanted as a child. I now was that role model, and so, and I took that as like it was an honor, right? And so I started looking at facilitation. I was like, oh, I'd love to be a facilitator. With my experience with my daughter, I became with the PPD and all that kind of stuff with the depression, and also realizing how little resources there are available for these kind of things, especially for moms who struggle with like perinatal mood disorders. I actually became nationally certified as a facilitator for parents with perinatal mood disorders, and I started leading virtual groups of like new moms groups, and leading these groups so that we can come in a safe place and share about our struggles in motherhood and all that kind of stuff, right? And so that was already planted. And then in the winter of 2022, I went to Miami for a speaking engagement. It was an in-person engagement, and I was surrounded by the most incredible people at this like event. There were coaches and healers and speakers and energy workers. Like, it was just this amazing group of people. And I was soaking it all up. Like, I was listening to their conversations and how they were helping people and like the changes they were creating in the world. And I was so inspired by everything that they were doing. And there was this one woman that was there who's she's a very successful coach, and her and I just kind of gravitated to each other. And during one of the lunches, we sat down and we started talking, and she was like, she's like, you are going to be a coach. And I was like, what? She's like, you're going to be a coach. And she's like, you're going to help other people go through exactly what you went through, and even more. And I was like, what? Like, I had never thought about coaching at that time, right? And so as the universe works, I come home, and I'm in a weekend seminar. And at that seminar, at the end, they offered an opportunity to get certified in woman-centered coaching. And I jumped at the chance. I was like, okay, I'm like, this is not a coincidence,
Yeah.
So I jumped into this certification that's led by Dr. Claire Zammit. And she is the founder of like woman-centered coaching methodology. And so I joined her 18-month intensive to become a certified coach. And so I did that, and very, very high level training, very, very high level. And I loved that. I loved that I got to, kind of experience that kind of training, that level of training, that depth of training. And then I started working with clients last year. And this year, I've very much now, my focus is moms. And so I very much am passionate to serve moms who are very much like me, who are navigating, raising young children, and they find themselves in these cycles of like burnout and overwhelm and shame and blame and guilt, and and these repeating these patterns that a lot of these moms, because I talk to them all the time, they're not even aware that they're actually like, it's these subconscious patterns from their upbringing that they're now, kind of passing down to their kids, right? And so just even the awareness is so powerful, to be able to name that. Hey, did you ever think, like, how was your upbringing? How were like what were the consequences when you reacted like this in your home?
Yeah.
And then they start putting two and two together, and it's like, oh yeah, you're right, like. And so let me teach you how to be able to, first of all, become aware of these patterns, and then be able to break free from them and replace them with new, healthier coping strategies and tools, which is what I do. This is my living, breathing, kind of testimonial, if you will.
Yeah.
Right?
I love this. I was working with someone the other night, and through our conversation, I had asked her about her childhood, and then we got further on into her life and that, and she had this moment where she was like, "Oh my gosh," and I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "I just realized I'm doing the same thing in my relationship that I witnessed at home growing up." So it is, it's so big. And when we start to, and especially like, it seems like it's easier for women to recognize these cycles than it is for men. And let me reframe that. There are more women than men that recognize this. And so that's very, very powerful. We're getting close to just about an hour here. So this has been very, very enlightening. What like I think you have a free gift for everybody, or a free something.
Yes.
Or you have something that you would like to gift them.
Yeah, so I have a grounding, centering meditation that I recorded. That's an instant download. And with that comes a little mini ebook on guided meditations, which has been one of my most favorite tools that I use. And so that there's that. And then October 11th, which actually you're getting the first word of this, like public word of this. I have my Healing Mama workshop on October 11th. I'm actually announcing it to the public tomorrow. So you're getting first exclusive news. The workshop is talking about all what we just talked about, right? The motherhood journey, like all of that kind of stuff. And I'm so excited to be able to work one-on-one for a limited time with a limited number of moms for the rest of the year before launching my big group coaching program in January 2025. And so I'm really, really excited because the ripple effects, in just like my mission is to help heal family lineages one mom at a time, and it's truly we do have the power to do that. When we heal the mom, we heal the daughter, we heal, the
7 generations, they say, right? Yeah.
Exactly, and we can have it's so possible to have a happy, healthy, thriving home, despite, my life, for example, right? The darkness and all of that kind of stuff, right? And you just need a guide, and I'm so grateful to be able to be that guide for other moms and take them by the hand and show them that there is a better way.
I love that. I love that because it was 55-55 when you said that last sentence.
Nice.
I just want to bring to light. You gave a specific date, and this is an evergreen. So that October 11th Healing Mama workshop. Does it look like it's going to be one that they'll be able to have access to, or be able to find the most current dates to on your? Do you have a website?
Yeah, so my website is abigailteixeira.com. I don't have that information on there yet because, like I said, I'm just literally going to announce it tomorrow. So if you're able to register, so if you opt in for the free gift, you're gonna get so it's my email, right? So you'll get the newsletter with all the information and all that kind of stuff. And if you're not able to make it live, there will be a replay that's going to be available afterwards so that you can take it in. And if it aligns and you feel that it'd be a good fit, I'd love to jump on a call and kind of explore how it would look like to work together.
Love that. I absolutely love that. There's just so many different people here that can have problems like you've experienced, and I'm really glad that you have chosen to step onto such a courageous path and step into the light and step into the life, your life, and because of that, you're helping others step into the light and step into their lives as too. Beautiful.
Oh, thank you. This was such a great conversation. Thank you so much. And thank you for your insights along the way. I had some aha moments even, and I've told the story multiple times, but I had some new insights that were very enlightening just from what you shared and how you reflected in the conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you, listeners. Take a moment to subscribe, if you will. Write some comments to Abby in the feed, and know that she's definitely here to support you if you are one of her people. She would love to hear from you. Thank you.